The silence in my apartment had become a physical presence. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a settled home. It was the hollow, ringing silence of absence. It pooled in the corners where Mark's armchair used to be and clung to the empty side of the bed. For 3 weeks since he'd packed his books and his half of the memories, I had existed in that silence, moving through my days like a ghost in my own life. I worked from home, a soulless data entry job that required nothing but motor function, and ordered food in. The highlight of my day was often the brief, anonymous transaction with a delivery driver. I was an island, and the tide was going out. Then I got the flu, and even that minimal contact with the outside world ceased. For 4 days, I was a miserable cliché, subsisting on saltine crackers and the dregs of a Gatorade bottle. The silence was now punctuated only by my own pathetic coughing and the creak of the floorboards as I shuffled from bed to couch and back again. It was on the 5th day, sometime around noon, that a sharp, confident rap sounded at my door. It was so unexpected that for a moment, I thought I'd imagined it, a fever-induced hallucination. But it came again, 3 firm knocks that seemed to vibrate right through the floor. I dragged myself off the sofa, pulling my worn, gray bathrobe tighter around me. My hair was a greasy mess, my face was pale and puffy, and I probably smelled like a sickroom. I considered ignoring it, letting whoever it was assume I wasn't home. But a sliver of curiosity, or perhaps just profound loneliness, propelled me forward. I peered through the peephole. It was him, my neighbor from 3B, Liam. I didn't know his name from any formal introduction, but from the discreet label on his mailbox next to mine. He was an EMT. I knew this because I often saw him coming or going in his dark blue uniform, his bearing always straight and purposeful even when he looked exhausted. We'd shared a handful of tight-lipped smiles and perfunctory nods in the hallway. That was the entire extent of our relationship. And now he was at my door. My heart did a stupid little flutter. It was an involuntary reaction I'd learned to suppress over the years. He was, by any objective measure, beautiful. Not in a polished, movie star way, but in a solid, real-world way. He had dark, unruly hair that always looked like he'd just run his hands through it, and a strong jaw that was usually shadowed with stubble. But it was his eyes that always snagged my attention in those fleeting hallway encounters. They were a deep, steady brown, and they seemed to see everything. They were seeing my door right now. I took a breath, resigned to the mortification of my current state, and unlocked the deadbolt. The clicks sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet apartment. I opened the door a few inches. He stood there, not in his uniform, but in a plain gray t-shirt that stretched across his chest and a pair of worn jeans. He looked bigger, more solid, without the official paramedic gear. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were focused, doing a quick, professional scan of what he could see of me. "Hey," he said. His voice was just as I'd imagined it might be up close, a low, calm rumble. "Sorry to bother you. Just hadn't seen you in a few days. Figured I'd check in." My brain struggled to process this. A neighbor. Checking in. It felt like a concept from a black-and-white television show. "Oh." I managed, my own voice a scratchy ruin. I got the flu. Been laid up." A flicker of something crossed his face. "Concern, maybe." "Yeah, you look like it," he said, but it wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact. "You on your own with it?" The question was simple, but it landed like a stone in my gut. "On your own." The words echoed the silence that had been my constant companion. "Yeah," I croaked. "Just me." He nodded slowly, his gaze holding mine. For a second, I felt utterly transparent, like he could see the whole pathetic story of the last month written all over my face. He shifted his weight. "You eaten anything today?" I thought of the half-sleeve of crackers on my nightstand. "Sort of." He sighed, a soft puff of air. It wasn't a sigh of exasperation, but of decision. "Right. Stay there." He turned and walked back toward his own apartment, leaving me standing dumbly in my open doorway. I should have closed it. I should have called out a weak, "No, really, I'm fine." But I didn't. I just stood there, robe hanging open, a cold draft swirling around my ankles, and waited. A minute later, he was back, holding a carton of orange juice and a small grocery bag. "Let me in," he said. It wasn't a request. And like a fool, I did. I stepped back and let him walk into my world of silence and stale air. He moved past me, his arm brushing mine, and the brief contact sent a jolt of warmth through my fever-chilled skin. The first thing I noticed was his scent. It was clean, like soap and fresh laundry, with a faint, almost metallic tang that I associated with his job. It was the smell of competence, of health. It cut right through the stagnant air in my apartment. He didn't comment on the mess, the stray mugs, the pile of blankets on the floor, the general air of neglect. He just walked into my small kitchen as if he belonged there. I hovered awkwardly in the doorway, watching him. He moved with an unhurried efficiency that was mesmerizing. He opened my cabinets, found a pot, and filled it with water. He took a can of chicken noodle soup from the bag he'd brought. Classic. "You have any ginger or honey?" he asked, not turning around. Cabinet to the left of the sink," I mumbled, feeling like a guest in my own home. He found them, along with a lemon I'd bought weeks ago with ambitious, pre-breakup plans for cocktails. He expertly sliced off a few pieces of ginger and a wedge of lemon. I watched his hands. They were strong, with clean, short-trimmed nails. Capable hands. Hands that knew how to fix things. How to save people. I wondered what it would feel like to have those hands on me, not in a professional capacity, but with intention. I immediately shoved the thought away, blaming the fever. "Go sit down," he said, his back still to me. "You're swaying." I hadn't even realized I was. I retreated to the couch and sank into the cushions, pulling a blanket over my lap. From there, I had a perfect view of him. The gray t-shirt pulled taut across his back as he stirred the pot. The easy way he occupied the space. He didn't seem to feel the oppressive silence at all. In fact, his presence seemed to absorb it, replacing it with the gentle clink of a spoon against metal and the soft hiss of the gas burner. He brought a steaming mug over to me first. "Tea," he announced, setting it on the coaster on my end table. "Honey, lemon, ginger. Drink it." Then he went back for the soup. He poured it into a bowl, one I hadn't used in months, and brought it over with a spoon. He placed it on the coffee table in front of me. "Thanks," I said, my voice still a rasp. The word felt inadequate. He just nodded and then, to my complete surprise, he didn't leave. He pulled over the ottoman that usually sat in the corner, the one Mark always complained was in the way, and sat down on it, facing me. He was close. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. "So," he said, his voice low and even, "you gonna tell me what's really going on?" I blinked at him over the rim of the soup bowl. The steam warmed my face. "I told you. The flu." He gave me a look. It was a patient, knowing look that I imagined he used on panicked car crash victims and hysterical family members. "The flu doesn't make your apartment feel like this," he said softly. "This level of quiet takes practice." My breath hitched. He saw it. He actually saw the silence. I had thought I was the only one who could feel it, a private haunting. But he felt it too. I looked down into my soup, at the limp noodles and unnaturally yellow broth. I didn't know what to say. The truth felt too heavy, too intimate to share with this practical stranger who was currently saving me from a diet of crackers. But he waited. He didn't fill the space with chatter. He just sat there, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze steady. He was listening. Not to my words, because I wasn't speaking, but to the silence itself. And in that moment, something inside me, a tightly wound knot of pride and loneliness, began to unravel. "My boyfriend left," I said to the soup. The words came out quiet and brittle. 3 weeks ago, we were together for 5 years. I braced myself for the reaction. A flicker of surprise. A moment of awkwardness. The subtle shift in posture that always came when I mentioned a boyfriend to a straight man. But Liam didn't move. His expression didn't change. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said. His tone was simple, direct. No pity, no judgment. Just a clean, uncomplicated statement of empathy. And that was it. That was all it took. The dam broke. I started talking. I told him about Mark, about the slow, painful erosion of our relationship, about the final argument over something so stupid I couldn't even remember what it was. I told him about the feeling of coming home to an apartment that was suddenly twice as big and 10 times as empty. I talked and drank the tea and ate the soup, my voice growing stronger as the warmth spread through my chest. Liam just listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer advice. He just nodded occasionally, his eyes never leaving my face, making me feel like what I was saying was the most important thing in the world. When I finally ran out of words, the silence that returned was different. It wasn't the hollow, ringing void from before. It was a soft, shared quiet, filled with the unspoken understanding that had just passed between us. "That's a heavy load to carry on your own," he said finally. I nodded, feeling a blush creep up my neck. I'd just unloaded 5 years of baggage onto my virtual stranger neighbor. "Sorry," I mumbled. "You came to check if I was dead in a ditch, not to get my entire life story." A small smile touched his lips for the first time. It transformed his entire face, softening the stoic lines around his mouth. "Part of the job," he said. "Sometimes the two are related." He stood up, taking my empty bowl and mug. "Get some rest. The soup and tea should help." He took the dishes to the sink and rinsed them. I watched his back, the muscles shifting under his shirt. "Liam," I said. He turned, leaning against the counter. "Yeah. Thank you," I said, and I meant it more than I'd meant anything in weeks. "Really?" He held my gaze for a long moment. "Anytime, Ethan," he said, using my name for the first time. He must have seen it on the mailbox, just as I'd seen his. The sound of it in his low voice sent another one of those stupid, traitorous flutters through my chest. Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me in a silence that now felt peaceful. That first visit set a new precedent for my life. It was no longer a hermetically sealed container of loneliness. The next day, there was a text from an unknown number. "Feeling any better? Liam, 3B. My heart leaped. I had no idea how he'd gotten my number, then remembered our building had a shared contact list for emergencies. An emergency contact. The thought was strangely comforting. I texted back that I was, and thanked him again. His reply was immediate. "Good. Stay hydrated." He didn't stop by that day, or the next, and a part of me, the cynical, wounded part, thought that was it. He'd done his good deed, fulfilled his neighborly, and perhaps professional, duty. But on the third evening, just as I was contemplating another solitary meal of leftovers, there was that same firm knock on the door. I opened it to find him in his uniform, looking tired. The faint scent of antiseptic clung to him. "Long shift," he said by way of greeting. He held up a brown paper bag. "I have not yet eaten, and I figured you were sick of your own cooking." And just like that, he was in my kitchen again. This time it was Thai food. He unpacked the containers, his movements weary but still precise. We ate sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa. Because my small dining table was still covered in work-related clutter, I didn't have the energy to move. It was less awkward this time. We talked about his day, a fender bender, a false alarm with an elderly woman, the endless paperwork. I found myself watching the way he gestured with his fork, the way his brow furrowed when he talked about a frustrating call. I was studying him. I couldn't help it. I was an observer by nature, and he was a fascinating subject. I noticed the way the lines around his eyes crinkled when he was amused, a map of quiet humor. I noticed the way he had of tilting his head when he was listening intently, as if to better catch the words. Most of all, I noticed the small, almost imperceptible touches. When he passed me the container of pad CEW, his fingers brushed against mine, and the contact was electric. Later, as we were cleaning up, we reached for the same container lid on the counter, and our hands collided. He didn't pull back immediately. His hand, warm and solid, rested on top of mine for a fraction of a second too long. My breath caught in my throat. I looked up and met his eyes. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze was intense. Then he blinked and pulled his hand away, a faint flush rising on his neck. My internal monologue was a raging torrent of hope and panic. He's just being friendly. It was an accident. Straight guys don't know their own strength, their own proximity. They bump into you and think nothing of it. But another voice, a smaller, more hopeful one, whispered he felt it too. "You saw it." He blushed. I spent the rest of the night replaying that tiny moment, analyzing it from every angle, torturing myself with the ambiguity of it all. This became our new normal. 2 or 3 times a week, he'd either knock on my door after a shift or text me to see if I wanted to grab a beer. We migrated from my messy living room to the small, shared balcony that connected our 2 apartments, a flimsy divider separating our spaces. We'd sit out there in the evenings, the city lights painting a glittering backdrop, and we would talk. He learned about my dead-end job, my abandoned hobby of painting, my complicated relationship with my family. I learned about his childhood in a small town, His decision to become a paramedic after his father had a heart attack, his love for hiking on his rare days off. He never mentioned a girlfriend. I never asked. The question felt too dangerous, like a pin poised to pop the delicate bubble of intimacy we had built. I'd scoured his apartment for clues during the one time I'd been inside to help him move a new bookshelf. There were no feminine touches, no stray makeup or hair products in the bathroom. The decor was sparse, functional, male, but that meant nothing. My own apartment, even when Mark lived here, had never screamed gay couple. One night, we were out on the balcony, sharing a six-pack. It was a warm, late summer evening, and the air was thick with the scent of distant rain and city exhaust. Liam was leaning back in his chair, his head resting against the brick wall, his eyes closed. He looked peaceful. "Do you ever think about getting out of the city?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. "Sometimes," I admitted. "I think about having a small house somewhere quiet. A garden. A dog. The whole cliché." He opened his eyes and looked at me. His gaze was soft in the dim light from my living room. "You don't talk about dating," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. My stomach tightened. Here it was. The tipping point. "Not much to talk about," I said, trying for a casual tone and failing miserably. I took a long swallow of my beer, the cold liquid doing nothing to cool the heat rising in my chest. "Are you happy on your own?" he pressed gently. "I am on my own. I am with you right now. But I am completely, utterly on my own." The thought screamed in my head. I stared out at the sprawling cityscape, at the thousands of tiny lights representing thousands of other lives. "No," I said, the word barely a whisper. "Not really." He was silent for a long time. I could feel his eyes on me, a tangible weight. I risked a glance at him. He was watching me with that same intense, unreadable expression from the kitchen, but this time there was something else in it. Something questioning. "You can talk to me, you know," he said, his voice even lower than before. "About anything, Ethan." The subtext was a tidal wave. He wasn't just talking about my job or my family. He was talking about this, about the charged space between us, about the lingering touches and the loaded silences. He was giving me an opening, a door left ajar. All I had to do was push it. But I was a coward. I was so terrified of misreading the signs, of shattering this fragile, beautiful thing we had, this thing that had saved me from the crushing silence. If I was wrong, I wouldn't just lose a potential lover. I would lose my only friend. I would lose the man who brought me soup. So I said nothing. I just gave a small, non-committal nod and changed the subject, asking him about a call he'd mentioned earlier. He let me retreat back into the safety of our established friendship. But as we talked, the air remained thick with what had not been said. The unspoken hung between us, more real and more solid than any words we exchanged for the rest of the night. The tension became unbearable over the next week. Every interaction was fraught with a new level of awareness. When he handed me a beer, I was hyper-aware of his fingers brushing mine. When we sat on the balcony, I was conscious of the inches separating our knees, of the sound of his breathing in the quiet. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something to snap. I found myself replaying every conversation, every glance, every accidental touch, searching for confirmation, for a sign that was clear enough for even my terrified brain to accept. I was going insane. It happened on a Tuesday. It was raining, a steady, miserable drizzle that had been going on all day. There was no balcony sitting to be had. He texted me around 9. "Bad day. Need a drink. Your place or mine?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Mine." I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. "I have whiskey." He showed up 10 minutes later, soaked. Raindrops clung to his hair and his eyelashes. He'd taken off his uniform jacket, and his blue shirt was damp, clinging to his shoulders and chest. He looked wrecked. The usual calm in his eyes was replaced by a haunted, exhausted darkness. "Rough one?" I asked, taking his wet jacket and hanging it over a chair. "The worst," he muttered, running a hand through his dripping hair. I poured 2 generous glasses of whiskey and handed one to him. He took it and downed half of it in one go, his throat working. He stood in the middle of my living room, seeming to fill the entire space with his restless, agitated energy. "It was a kid," he said, his voice raw. "Car accident. We did everything right. Everything. And he just didn't make it." He stared down into his glass, his knuckles white where he gripped it. "Sometimes you can't fix it. You're just there to watch it break. My heart ached for him. I had never seen him like this. He was always the steady one, the rock. To see him so undone was unnerving, and it stirred a fierce, protective instinct in me. I wanted to wrap my arms around him, to absorb some of his pain. But I stood frozen, a few feet away, clutching my own glass. He looked up, and his eyes found mine. They were filled with a raw vulnerability that stole my breath. I hate this feeling, he said, his voice thick. Coming back here. To the quiet. It's too loud tonight. There it was again. The quiet. Our shared enemy. Our common ground. This is it. Now. The thought was a command. My fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But for the first time, my desire to comfort him was stronger. My need to close the distance was more powerful than my terror of the consequences. I put my glass down on the coffee table. I walked toward him, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I stop right in front of him. I am so close I can smell the rain on his skin and the whiskey on his breath. His eyes are wide, tracking my every move. The air crackles. I'm not on my own because I want to be, I say, my voice shaking but clear. I'm echoing my own cowardly words from the balcony, turning them into something else. It's just complicated. I hold his gaze, my entire being focused into this single, terrifying moment. It's complicated when the person you think about is probably not thinking about you. I don't break eye contact. I let the words hang there, a direct, unambiguous confession. His expression doesn't change, but I see a storm of emotion in the depths of his eyes. Surprise, recognition, and something else I can't name. He doesn't speak. The silence stretches, taut and humming. I've done it. I've jumped. Now I just have to see if I land or if I fall. He takes a slow breath. He lifts his free hand, the one not holding the whiskey glass, and brings it to my face. His fingers are cool from the rain. His thumb gently strokes my cheekbone, a feather-light touch that sends a tremor through my entire body. My eyes flutter shut. You're an idiot, Ethan, he murmurs, his voice a rough caress. Of course I'm thinking about you. And then his lips are on mine. It is not a gentle kiss. It's desperate and hungry, full of all the unspoken tension and frustrated longing of the past 2 months. It's the whiskey and the rain and the exhaustion and the relief. His hand tangles in my hair, pulling me closer, and I make a small, broken sound in the back of my throat. My hands come up to grip his shirt, bunching the damp fabric in my fists as if to anchor myself. It is a kiss that is a question and an answer and a confession all at once. It tastes of hope. When we finally break apart, we're both breathless. He rests his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. His hand is still on my cheek, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw. I can feel the frantic beat of his heart mirroring my own. Okay, he breathes out. Just that one word. The silence that follows is the most profound I have ever experienced. It's not empty. It's full to bursting. I open my eyes and he's looking at me, his dark eyes searching mine. The haunted look is gone, replaced by a dazed, wondrous light. My panic, which had been momentarily obliterated by the kiss, tries to resurface. What now? What did I just do? I feel a tremor of fear, the old instinct to pull back, to protect myself. I've just blown up my one friendship, the only thing holding me together. As if sensing my internal spiral, his other hand comes up to cup my other cheek, holding my face gently between his palms. His grip is firm, grounding. Hey, he says softly. Look at me. I meet his gaze. Took you long enough, he says, and a slow, beautiful smile spreads across his face. It's not the small, amused smile from before. This is a wide, genuine, life-altering smile. The tension in my shoulders dissolves. A laugh, shaky and full of relief, escapes me. I'm not the one with the paramedic training, I say. I thought you were supposed to be the one who takes action. I was giving you space, he counters, his thumb stroking my cheeks. I didn't want to push. I thought. I wasn't sure if you were ready. Ready? I ask, my voice full of wonder. Liam, I've been ready since you walked in here with that can of soup. He chuckles, a low, warm sound that vibrates through his hands into my skull. Good to know, he hesitates, his smile fading slightly into something more serious. I haven't done this before, he admits quietly. With a guy. My heart stutters. Oh, but I've known for a long time, he continues quickly, as if afraid I'll pull away. That I wasn't entirely straight. I just never. I don't know. It never felt right. No one ever felt right. He looks at me, his expression open and completely vulnerable. Until you opened your door looking like death warmed over. I can't help the smile that spreads across my face. So you're saying my appeal is my resemblance to a corpse? No, he says, his voice dropping an octave. I'm saying your appeal is that even when you looked like hell and your whole world was falling apart, you were still the most interesting person I'd ever seen through a peephole. He leans in and kisses me again, slowly this time. It's a deliberate, tender kiss that is all about reassurance. It's a promise. It says, this is real. We're okay. We end up on the couch, not talking much anymore. He just holds me, his arm wrapped securely around my shoulders, my head resting on his chest. I can hear the steady, calming rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my ear. The rain patters against the window pane, a gentle counterpoint to the quiet in the room. This quiet is the best one yet. It's a quiet of contentment, of safety. It's the quiet of two people who have finally found their way to each other. I close my eyes, breathing in his scent, rain, soap, and something that is just uniquely, wonderfully Liam. The next morning, I wake up alone in my bed. For a single, gut-wrenching moment, panic seizes me. I sit bolt upright, my heart pounding. It was a dream, or he regretted it. He left. The silence of the apartment feels ominous again, a return to the hollow ache. But then I smell it. Coffee. I throw on my bathrobe and pad out to the living room. The door to the balcony is ajar, and Liam is standing out there, leaning against the railing, a mug in his hand. He's wearing the same jeans from last night, but has swapped the damp uniform shirt for a spare t-shirt of mine. One of my old painting shirts with a smear of ultramarine blue on the shoulder. It's too tight on him, but seeing him in my clothes, in my space, in the morning light, does something irreversible to my heart. He turns as he hears me approach, and his face breaks into that slow, warm smile. Morning, he says. There's coffee. I walk out onto the balcony, the cool concrete a pleasant shock under my bare feet. The rain has stopped, and the city looks washed clean, gleaming in the early sun. He hands me a mug he must have poured for me, and our fingers touch. This time, there's no jolt of anxiety, no frantic internal analysis. It's just a simple, warm touch. A fact. We stand there for a while, sipping our coffee in a comfortable silence, watching the city wake up. The awkwardness I had feared, the morning after unease, is completely absent. It feels normal. It feels right. I woke up, he says, not looking at me, but at the skyline. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet in my apartment didn't feel lonely. It just felt quiet. He turns to me. Because I knew you were just through the wall. I feel my own smile spread, wide and effortless. That's it. That's the whole thing. He gets it. He feels it too. My journey from that hollowed-out man drowning in silence to this person, standing in the morning sun with a cup of coffee and a heart full of cautious, brilliant hope, hadn't been a journey I'd taken alone. It had started with a knock on the door. It had been propelled by a can of soup, by a listening ear, by a shared beer on a summer night. Liam hadn't just checked on me. He had pulled me from the wreckage. And he hadn't just listened. He had heard the things I wasn't saying. I look at him, really look at him, standing there in my paint-stained t-shirt, the morning light catching the flecks of gold in his steady, brown eyes. He is not a fantasy or a projection of my loneliness. He is real, solid. He is the man who saw the silence and decided to fill it not with noise, but with his presence. I don't know what comes next. I don't know how to do this, how to build something new from the rubble of an old life. There will be awkward moments and fears and all the messy complications of two people learning each other. But as I stand beside him, the warmth of the mug in my hands and the warmth of his presence beside me, I am not afraid. For the first time in a very long time, the future doesn't feel like a vast, empty expanse. It feels like an invitation. It feels like coming home.